Hi everybody, it's a Wednesday at DiFebo's Market. Today we're going to be doing some no-bake cheesecake for you. I know that cheesecake's a little daunting with the water bath and all that business, so this is why we're going to show you a no-bake version, a little bit easier at home for you. So we're going to actually start, we're going to do some whipped cream in our stand mixer. So right now I've got the 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, again use a good vanilla extract, and then 1 1/4 cups of heavy cream. And you're gonna actually whip that to a stiff peak. And what a stiff peak means is, I'll actually show you here. When you tip your whisk over, it's gonna actually hold up for you. So I'm gonna just give this another whisk. Like I said, I've already done this, and you wanna watch your cream very carefully, because if you over whip this, you're gonna start making butter. If you find that you have over whipped your whipped cream, and it hasn't gone too far, you can actually add just a splash of heavy cream. That'll actually bring it back for you. But again, you're just gonna wanna bring this to a stiff peak, and this is gonna be our first step to that no-bake cheesecake. So see, you're gonna actually keep that holding its shape there, so it's not too runny, it's not that medium or soft peak. And we're just gonna set this guy aside, just into a separate bowl, because we're actually going to use this mixer for our next portion as well. So again, we've whisked that heavy cream with that vanilla extract to a stiff peak, and I'm going to set that aside because we're going to use that a little bit later. And now what we're going to do actually is we're going to make our graham crust. Now I've got about a 7 to 8 inch springform pan. If you don't have one of these, I would really recommend going out and getting one, especially for anything like this, any types of custard, pies that you're making. What's really great about these is they've actually got that spring release on the end, so then your bottom comes right out. So again, really important if you want to take on, a regular cheesecake or these no bakes, getting that spring form pan is going to make a difference for you. And then I've actually sprayed the bottom of this guy. That way our graham crust isn't going to stick when you try and bring it out. So in this bowl here.
So what would you say an alternative is if you don't have one of those spring form pans?
You can use a traditional cake pan. It's going to be a lot harder to get that out of there. Or even if you want to do like a pie pan, if you got something like that, you could also do it in there as well, because you'd be able to get that first piece out a little bit easier in a pie pan. But again, I do recommend getting a springform pan if you don't have one. And you can pick these up Michael's, Hobby Lobby, your local Walmart. You can pretty much find them anywhere, which is really nice. And we are going to do the graham bottom. So right now I've got 2 cups of graham cracker crumbs, and I have 1/3 cup of brown sugar, and then I have 1/2 cup of melted butter. So we're going to put all that together here, and I'm just going to use my hand, because again, that's going to be the easiest way here for you. So you're just going to combine all that together. And when you're making a graham crust, you don't want to have too much butter. If you have too much butter, it's to your graham ratio, it's not going to bake off and set up for you. So what you're looking for is just kind of that wet sand texture. And that wet sand texture is going to, you see it kind of holds, but it kind of you can still break it apart a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to line the bottom of this pan with that graham crust, and I'm just using my hand. You can always use the back of a cup if you want to get that really nice and even flat. But again, your hand works just as well. You want to make sure that's packed in there as well as you can. And again, nice and even. So this is what you should have. Now this, you're going to want to bake in the oven about 325 for about 9 to 10 minutes, just until it's nice and golden brown. My trick is, once you start to smell this crust, pull it out, because that's your kind of key that it's done. And once it's out of the oven. You're gonna let that cool. And I've actually got one that's already done here for us. So this is what you should have. It's a little bit golden on around the edges, and it's nice and set. If you would feel that, it's nice and set in there. It's not gonna move on me. So that's gonna be our base. And this base is good for any other no-bake pies as well. So you can really take this recipe and apply it to others that you might already have. So I'm gonna set this aside, and we're gonna make the rest of our filling that's gonna make that no-bake cheesecake.
How high up is the sides to the pie crust?
It's gonna come right about to here. So it's not
too hot.
Yeah, not too thick. If you like it thicker, you can always adjust the graham crumbs and the ratio to the butter and that sort of thing if you like a higher crust. And you can definitely do that as well. I just like a thinner crust on mine. Not too thin again, because you do want that base to be sturdy enough to hold whatever you've got as far as your pie or your cheesecake.
Could you do like muffin tins or something for single serving?
You could. You would just want to make sure you would have, like here at the market, we've got some that you can actually release the bottom. You'd want to have something like that, because otherwise it's going to be, I think, too difficult to kind of release those for you. And the springform pans do come in smaller ones. Our final one, I actually did a little bit smaller version, so you can kind of see the variations that you can do. But again, there's nothing like a springform pan. It makes your life so much easier. So if you can invest in one of those, and they're not too expensive, but if you can invest in one of those, that's what you definitely want to do.
You're gonna get brand ambassador calls.
I know.
Pan companies.
That's right. So we're gonna make the rest of the filling for the no-bake cheesecake. So I've actually got 3 8-ounce blocks of cream cheese that's softened. For any of your ingredients for this recipe, excluding the whipped cream, you really want to have them at room temperature. That way they cream really nicely, because you really want that consistency to be really silky smooth. So we're going to put this into that stand mixer. And if you're not making a mess, are you really baking? That's the thing. So we've got that cream cheese in there, and then I've also got 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. So that's gonna go right in there with that cream cheese. And I still have that whisk attachment on here. I like the whisk. It's gonna incorporate some more air, again, making that really nice and fluffy. And I'm gonna turn this mixer up pretty high, because again, I really want any lumps in there to be eliminated, and for that, again, to really be rich and creamy. And about halfway through, I'm gonna scrape the bowl. Just like we talked about in previous recipes, scraping the bowl really ensures that you're getting everything all the way to the bottom, and that everything is nice and even. So again, just whisking this so that all the lumps, if you have any, are getting out of there, and that sugar is going to combine with that cream cheese. And at this point, you cannot over whip this, so don't be afraid to really let this go and whip nice for you, because again, there's no fear of over whipping at this point, not like the heavy cream was. All right, so that's really nice and smooth. And again, the only reason you would really gonna have a lump issue is if your heavy cream's not at room temperature. You're gonna really struggle if your ingredients aren't at room temperature and nice and soft, because you will never get them as smooth as you're gonna want them. So that's a really crucial thing with any regular baked cheesecakes or these no-bake cheesecakes. Really making sure everything's at room temp for you. So with this, I'm actually going to add, I've got 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar. I've got 2 teaspoons of orange juice. I also have 3/4 of a teaspoon of almond extract. And then I also have a 1/4 cup of sour cream. And all of that's going to go in there. And I'm going to take a brief moment to adjust our little technical difficulty there. Can you hear me, Callie? Okay. So all of this, like I mentioned, is going to go right into our cream cheese mixture. And I like the orange juice. You can't taste it, but it gives like a little brightness to it that you kind of wonder what that is, what that brightness is to that recipe. Again, one of those like silent ingredients that really makes a difference. And then just putting that sour cream right in there as well.
Never would have thought of sour cream.
It almost cuts the cream cheese a little bit. So it's not so much of that dairy flavor. That sour cream kind of cuts it with the acidity. So again, really nice kind of balance of flavors. And I'm just gonna whisk that all together. And again, I'm gonna scrape my bowl here because I'm seeing that it's not quite getting all incorporated. And you could really play around with this recipe too. This is just kind of like a standard nice base. It's got a little bit of that almond flavor. It's got a little vanilla, again, a little citrus as well. But if you wanted to, take this and maybe do like a chocolate swirl, add some chocolate ganache to this to make it a full chocolate cheesecake, you could definitely do that as well. Definitely play around with it. As you get to know a recipe, you'll be able to adjust the sugar or adjust the extracts. If you want it to taste a little more almond or completely omit the almond, you could definitely do that as well. Again, it's one of those things that you can definitely play around with and kind of make it your own. All right, and I've got this all incorporated really nice and smooth. Just show you that. So I got that really nice and smooth in there. Again, getting out any lumps that you might have. And now we're gonna grab the whipped cream that we whipped to heavy peaks, a stiff peak. We're gonna grab that and we're actually gonna add the heavy cream into our cream cheese mixture. Gonna add that right in all at one time. It's totally fine. And we're actually gonna do that folding method that we did for some of our other recipes as well. So again, folding is just cutting right down the center and then folding that spatula right over. Again, cutting the center and folding those ingredients over. This is incorporating that whipped cream without deflating the whipped cream. So just fold in that whipped cream into that cream cheese mixture. Just until it's all combined. And that's what you should have. Again, you've got that whipped cream now fully incorporated into the cream cheese mixture there. And again, you want to make sure your crust is 100% cool. Just because if it's not, it's going to start to melt your whipped cream and your mixture is not going to be that light and fluffy consistency. It's going to start to really fall for you. So I'm going to...
Can you make that crust like a day ahead?
Oh, absolutely. You can make this whole recipe a couple days in advance if you'd like.
Refrigerate it or leave it on the counter covered, or?
You can, if you're stretched for time, you can pop it in the fridge, the freezer, if you're looking to really cool it down quick. Or yeah, you can definitely make this ahead of time. And then leave it on your counter. Just, again, at room temp, make sure it's cool, not warm or hot or anything like that. And you can make this whole cheesecake a couple days in advance. Even pop it in the freezer. You know, it'll stay a few days in your fridge for you. So especially like the summer parties coming up, you could definitely do it ahead of time. So I'm going to...
Well, with Easter coming up, do you have any ideas for like dressing it up real quick, making it look like a little bit springy?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely, I always like to garnish with something that's edible. So I like to do fruits, different citruses. You could almost, if you really wanted to, you could get those little like really festive like jelly beans or the little eggs. You could always do that too if you're doing something for little kiddos. You could also do like coconut if you wanted to do coconut, because that's always pretty popular for Easter. Just going to get an offset spatula here. And I'm just gonna flatten this guy out.
I think you and I are both very much coconut fans.
Yeah. It's definitely a coconut fan. All right, so and this doesn't have to be perfect, but I've lined this springform pan again with that graham crust that I did spray the pan before we put that graham crust in, and then I've filled it with the no-bake cheesecake batter. Now once I've got this in here and I've got the top pretty flat, I'm actually gonna wrap this on the board just so any air bubbles that are in there are gonna come out for you, and this way it's gonna settle itself. So it's gonna do that leveling on its own. If you don't, you might get those air pockets in there, which you don't want, because once you cut it, you're gonna have a hole here and there. So that's gonna ensure that you've really got a nice packed in cheesecake as well. And I would do that for, if you're making a regular cheesecake as well, I would do the same thing. Or any custard things you're doing, giving it just a nice wrap on the board really releases any air bubbles. Brownies, I do the same thing for. So once you've got your springform pan filled, you would put this into the fridge. I like to leave mine overnight. That way you're really gonna have a nice setup. Or, like we talked about, if you're kind of pressed for time, you can definitely pop this in the freezer. But again, fridge overnight's gonna do great for you. You can definitely make this ahead. Once you've got this set and you want to take it out of your springform pan, I like to take really nice tall glass of hot water with a really sharp knife, run that right around the edge, and then I like to, you would then pop this spring off of there and it'll lift right off for you. You can also dunk this whole thing in like a nice pan of hot water as well. If you're gonna do that, I would wrap this in aluminum foil, pop it down into that hot water just for a couple of seconds. That way that's gonna release for you on the side. If you don't do the aluminum foil though, however, you might run the risk of getting water up into your crust, and you don't want that, because then you're gonna get a soggy crust, and no one wants a soggy crust. So once it's in the fridge and once it's set, and like I said, I did a smaller one so you can kind of see the variation. You've got this nice little guy right here.
So uncovered in the fridge, or do you put film across the top?
You don't need to with this. Now, if you were doing any sort of custard, I would, because that custard, I would put plastic film right touching that.
So that won't get that.
It won't get the film. Yeah, like
That.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you call it, but
Yeah, it's that nasty little film that gets on top. Yeah, for this you won't have any issues. You can definitely cover it if you'd like. If you want to keep it, contained there, that's totally fine. You won't hurt it or anything like that. But yep, I just did a nice little border around the top, and then I put some fresh berries on top there. And this is the same recipe as that big guy. So you can get the little springform pans and do little individual desserts, which I always like. Everybody feels special when they get their own. That way nobody has to share. I have a sister, so I know how that is. But no-bake cheesecakes are great. Like I said, you can make this in advance. It's great for summer. It's this is a dessert you can really make all year round because, like I said, you can add, you can do like cherry amaretto, you can do a chocolate. I've done like a grasshopper, which is like a mint. I've done chocolate peppermint for Christmas time. So you can really get creative. This is just, again, showing you the process and showing you a nice kind of standard base that you can kind of add to and really be creative. But that's our no-bake cheesecake here at the market.
So, Brittany, could you get
Kelly.
really creative and do every single mini a different flavor, or would that be too ambitious?
You could. Yeah, you could, because you could make what we did here, and then you could kind of divvy them up. I would, make sure each one's equivalent in as far as batter goes, but yeah, you could really make one chocolate. You could do a raspberry or strawberry swirl.
And then watch the family fight.
That's right. That's it. You can make them again like individuals, and then you could really do a nice like dessert platter if you'd like. So there's really a lot that you can do with cheesecake. So yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. Again, here Wednesdays at the market. Facebook Lives are at 1 o'clock. We are going to be skipping Easter Sunday, the week of Easter Sunday, because we'll be pretty busy here at the market. So if you're local, stop in. We're going to have some delicious offerings for your Easter table. Shoot us any questions if you have. Otherwise,